Samsung Galaxy S23 4 months later. By the end of this video, you're going to find out everything I learned about this phone and experience to help you decide if this is your next phone. So what is up, guys? Nick here, helping you to master your technology. I've had the Galaxy S23 for over 4 months, 120 days plus. Actually, it's going on 5 months now. Let's begin by talking about the body and the build. Now, this phone actually comes in around that $600 to $700 price range, and it's been seeing some discounts and some deals. You might even be able to cop one on Prime Day. But this phone is such a good deal because phones that came out 5 or 6 years ago used to cost $699, $650. And now look what you're getting with a Samsung Galaxy S23 right now. It's such a good deal for everything that you're getting. Talking about the body and the build, we're taking off to the sides. You are going to see yourself an aluminum rail here, which does look pretty nice overall. I do like the USB-C SIM card tray. No eSIM business on this one. And you'll see over here, we do have ourselves the aluminum edges there as well. They do kind of look like stainless steel. Clean camera design off to the left here, left of the body. You'll see it right here, a triple camera design, which is a single flash. Now this does have capable of 30 times zoom, Samsung logo right there, matte texture glass back, and then a glass front. Flat display, that's what we're working with here. We're working with a flat display on this one. Let me know if you guys like flat displays down below. But definitely I'm really digging the flat display. Look how easy it was to put that screen protector on that baby right there. So definitely quite nice. Now, when you are looking at the front of the body, you will find yourself a punch hole though. So this is definitely not a full all screen, but definitely has really thin bezels and it really feels quite sleek, modern, and nice to hold. And while it does have not quite a squared body, you'll see it does have a nice curve right here. So it does feel quite nice in the hand. I don't think it's quite as smooth as something like the older iPhone 11 Pro Max or even some of the older Samsung phones like the S20 models. Those were a little smoother in the corners, but this is definitely quite premium and quite nice looking. One of the most important things I like about the Galaxy S23 though, 4 months later, and I keep thinking about this, is just how easily pocketable this phone has been. Just to slip it in the pocket, it feels like it's not there. Let's be real, it just doesn't. Also, the phone itself is incredibly light. Even though it has a pretty sizable 6.1 inch display, it is incredibly light. Only 168 grams or 5.39 ounces. Actually, I said that backwards, 5.93 ounces. It's quite nice. Gorilla Glass Victus 2 in front makes it quite durable as well. Although I did rock it in this silicone Samsung case, a little smooth back end right here, a little microfiber action just to give it a little more of a smooth feel, keep that back protected. The green color option is also quite nice, but do keep in mind there are plenty of color options for this, including Phantom Black. There's a cream color option. You can also get a graphite, a lime, and a lavender color. So there is a lot of colors to really suit your needs right here. All right, so let's take it on to the display here. So we talked about it being a 6.1 inch display. What are my thoughts on this baby 4 months later? Well, you know, it's a 1080. I wish Samsung would have stuck with their 2Ks, but I can see why they did this, maybe for a little bit better battery life on their smaller phone. We'll get into the battery life later, but this is a dynamic AMOLED display. It's a 2X variety, and it does have vivid modes, natural modes, and Samsung is definitely making it a little bit less advanced than some of the other, Android phones out there that can really dive deep into this. So they just give you the RGB and they give you the natural and the vivid. You can kind of see what you'll get up here, little examples of what it'll look like. But let me know if you guys are team natural, comment down below, team natural, or if you're team vivid, comment down below, team vivid. I'm personally team natural most of the time, but sometimes I throw it into the vivid, like for the video or when I'm watching some content. Now, scrolling up here, you'll see right here, we do have adaptive and motion smoothness or standard. Now, I'm never putting it in standard unless I need to save battery because it just looks choppy. So I'll leave it in the 120 Hertz mode and it looks great. Now, one thing I really like about this is the aspect ratio, something a lot of people don't think about, but a lot of phones are narrow out there. Samsung goes with a 19:9 aspect ratio on here, which is wide enough that it doesn't feel like a skinny, narrow phone. This phone does have 425 pixel density, so even though it's not a 2K, because it has that density, you still have a really sharp panel, even though it's on a smaller screen. You don't really need 4K or anything like that to get a nice quality experience. It's 425 is plenty enough. This also comes with an always on display. And even though this is a smaller display, unlike some other phones out there, I'm talking to you, Apple, you can still do split screen on this baby. So if that's something you want to do, you can make app pairs, you can do split screen. It's all here. The multitasking business, Samsung doesn't cheat you on this either. So the Galaxy S23, even though it's the smallest of the bunch, it can definitely do all of that good stuff. And because it has a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, it can easily do this without any slowdowns. You can easily throw this on DeX as well without any slowdowns. And so let's talk about that platform. Android 13, One UI 5.1. Let me tell you this, One UI is definitely a lot better than the old TouchWiz days. Samsung has really cleaned up stuff here, and it's quite simple to use now, while also still providing you with plenty of customization, plenty of advanced features and options if you want to take it to that level. Now, I tend to get bored of using my iPhone sometimes, and that's when I go ahead and play around with all this Galaxy stuff right here, and I just switch over to the Galaxy phone because it's so much more fun if you want to mess around with it and stuff like that, or if you just want to make it your own. There's just a lot more you can do with this, and that's just the Galaxy store. The options are limitless. Go into here, and then go over here and just type in launcher, and you can safely download plenty of them. Be careful with some of these. Some of these people are a little bit scammy, so you want to make sure you're downloading from reputable sources like Nova, for example, that have been around for more than a decade, I feel like already. And just download reputable launchers because you could get hacked. So be very careful. Use a Play Protect. Make sure you're checking with your virus scanners and stuff like that. And if you go on a device, care here on a Samsung, you will find yourself the ability to scan the phone and stuff like that right here. Scan phone if needed. They got like built-in McAfee protection. There's Samsung Knox. There's encryption. It's all here. But there's still applications that can get you if you're not being careful. So definitely be careful with that. Don't say I didn't warn you. Now, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 2. Let's discuss that. How does it power this phone? It's been the most impressive thing about this phone. You've seen the Samsung Galaxy S23 basically spank some other phones out there in terms of the performance. Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, and usually I'm not talking about a Samsung spanking nobody's experience on other phones, because most times other phones are, while they don't have the better spec than Samsung is usually a spec leader. They have better optimization. They just definitely perform better. But Samsung is starting to hear your complaints, and they have definitely addressed these, because the S23 is not only fast, it's also incredibly smooth, and it's buttery smooth actually, with the performance to match, beating things like the Tensor G2, and even in certain areas taking better advantage of the power than the Apple A series chips, which are technically faster according to benchmarks. In the real world, you don't really even notice it or get to use it that much. So this is probably one of the most powerful phones you can get, even though it's not even near the highest price. Now let me talk to you about the storage on here. And I have the 256 gig model. You can get this with a little bit higher. I believe it's up to 512 gig. You have UFS 3.1 and UFS 4.0 available. On the 128 gig, it's UFS 3.1. But this one, because it's 256, I get the UFS 4.0. But just all this means is we have really fast storage. Transfer speeds are incredibly quick on here, so no major issues. Samsung is really good with the chip speed and stuff like that, so really good. Let's take it off to the cameras here. So we do have triple cameras on here, and I just love how clean the aesthetic is on here. It's just very clean, simple circular cameras. There's no jazz going around it. It just sits flush. Not flush, but it sits there on the body, and they're not really sticking out of the body too much. It's just a really clean look, I would say, for the Samsung Galaxy S23. Now, what's been really impressive about this phone is that not a lot of phones are giving you the level of zoom that this phone is giving you at this price point, 30 times zoom. And the thing about it is that it's pretty usable. Like, don't get me wrong, this is no professional grade zoom, but it definitely is usable for a smartphone. And I think a lot of people are really going to enjoy that. Also, the actual photo results from this phone are very vibrant, very crispy, and overall just really good. So there's not really much more else to say about that. Samsung is throwing in a ton of usable modes here, including Expert RAW, Pro, Food, Panoramic, and the list goes on. You can see right here. But you can definitely do pro video on here. Like, this is a pro tool, even though you wouldn't look at it as a pro tool. Again, it doesn't have the highest end cameras, but it's still better than a lot of phones in this price range, and giving you a little bit more than you would expect at the base level. So Samsung's not ripping you at the smaller Samsung S23 just because you don't want to, or you just can't get the higher end. It's a little too much. You're still getting an amazing deal here. And then the front-facing cameras are also, let me get up out of here. The front-facing cameras are also really good because it's a 12 megapixel on the front, capable of 4K video. I think it's up to 60 actually. 4K at 60 on the front. So you got a great camera there on the front as well. And it's not too close to your face. You can back it out a little bit, so it's pretty good. They got this little hand gesture that goes ahead and allows you to just take that photo really easily. It's a really good camera system all around the board. I wouldn't be scared at all to use this thing. I wouldn't even be scared to pick this phone because it is. As a matter of fact, it's probably more camera than most people need. Even though there are phones with higher end cameras, I don't think most people are taking advantage of those higher end cameras enough to justify that extra price point. Let me know if you agree with that or not. And again, these are the same cameras that come on the S23 Plus. A couple other things to know. We do have Bluetooth 5.3, USB Type-C 3.2, which we talked about has USB-C earlier, Wi-Fi 6E. That's, super. This stuff is like ready for the future. So this is a future-proof phone right here. In-display ultrasonic fingerprint sensor, which is pretty secure. It's better than the optical versions, and it really works very well, even with the screen off. There's a difference in this versus some of the other phones out there in that I just find the accuracy, once you know where it's at, it's just better on the Samsung phone. Of course, you have DeX modes, and of course, there's a ton of features up here that really let you go a little bit deeper, but DeX is amazing because it turns your little 6.1-inch phone into a smartphone, into a desktop computer. It is a smartphone, into a desktop computer-like experience. And let me share with you the battery life. Now, the battery life on this phone is an easy day phone with regular use. Now, when I push this phone a little harder, I notice it does drain a lot faster than like an S23 Ultra, but you can't expect it to be better when it's got a 3900 milliamp hour battery. But that battery is still larger than a competing iPhone 14, for example, but it needs that extra battery, I would say, because of the Samsung software. At the end of the day, though, this is an easy day phone if you're, a regular to medium heavy user. A heavy user going to need the charger a lot more. Probably wouldn't even pick this phone because a heavy user is probably not interested in a, smaller smartphone. I say smaller, but 6.1 inches is actually not small. It's just a smaller smartphone. Definitely, this can, for most people, regular users can make it through a day. The target user of this phone easily can make it on the S23. And the last thing that I really want to push home is the cell strength and phone call quality. Now, a lot of people don't like to talk about this, or I don't know if they like to or not, but they don't really talk about this a lot. But Samsung S23 has some of the best signal strength I've seen all year. Not only is it good in urban areas, it's also better in rural areas than most other phones on the market today. So you should keep this in mind if you're the type of person who relies heavily on phone calling and messaging. Having really good signal strength is very important, and this phone is incredible at that. It also has pretty good audio quality, but it's not the loudest out there. The only con with this one, I literally only have one con with this phone, probably a couple actually. One, I'd like to see Samsung go to an all screen. I don't know how it's going to get done. Maybe they'll do an under display that actually has good quality, but until then, I don't see it happening. My only con really with this phone is that the resale value is not incredibly high unless you trade in for another Samsung phone. So if you buy this phone, it's not the type of phone that you can trade in the future for a good amount. So you better want to use it for a while or be planning on the trade-in with Samsung, who will give you a good amount for it. And I think the bezels are going to get thinner on a future Samsung. They just always are going to just try to improve everything. I think the cameras are going to get higher quality. I think the battery life is going to get better. But this phone is solid. Such a good improvement over the S22. And 4 months later, I picked this up, and it's one of my favorite phones I've used all year, to be honest with you. Like, I think this phone blows away the iPhone 14. Like, it's not even close. This phone is closer to an iPhone 14 Pro, which is actually several $100s more than this phone. And it has essentially all of the same great features that an iPhone 14 Pro has for hundreds less. So let me go ahead and ask you guys, are you picking up an S23 this year? Are you saving up for one? Are you going to wait to see what the iPhone 15 brings? Or are you going to wait for the S24 model coming next year? Thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you all in the very next episode. Nick here. Be sure to be well, and peace.